On in Chapter 11. This time we're going to talk about two-way tables, another way to display data and interpret our findings. So two-way tables is simply a frequency table that displays data collected from one source that belong to two different categories. So in other words, it's a survey that is basing off of two different categorical answers. Okay, now one category is represented by the rows, which in this case, if you look at the example, the category of class, freshman, sophomore, those are represented by your rows. The second category is represented by your columns. So mobile access, yes or no, that is your column representation. Now, what this is doing is if you look at these, we have something called joint frequencies. It's joint frequencies because, for example, the 55 represents both freshmen and yes to mobile access. Okay, those are called joint frequencies because they are combining two frequencies together. The second one, though, is what is called marginal frequencies. And marginal frequencies are simply the sums of the rows or the columns. So, for example, to find the marginal frequency of yes, we would literally just take 55 plus 63 and we would get 118. That is what is called a marginal frequency. Okay? Now, when you look at this data, you can break it down and you need to make sure that you understand what each of these numbers mean, what each of these joint frequencies really represent. So if you looked at the 12, for example, that represents the number of sophomores that said no to mobile access. If you look at the 63, that is the number of sophomores that said yes to mobile access. 55 is the number of freshmen that said yes to mobile access, and 22 is the number of freshmen that said no to mobile access. So that's the kind of information that you can pull off of this. All right, so let's take a look at this. You conduct a technology survey to publish on your school's website. You survey students in the school cafeteria about the technological devices they own. The results are shown in the two-way table. Find and interpret the marginal frequencies. So the marginal frequencies, remember, are your totals. So what we're going to do is we're going to find all of our totals for each row and column, and then we're going to say simply, what does that mean? So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go across the row. So cell phone, yes, I have 34 plus 124, and that would give me 158. No's, 18 and 67, that would be 85. Going down now, tablet or computer, yes, you have 52, and no, we have 191. Okay, and we're getting that by just simply adding. Then what you can do is you can take the marginal frequencies, add them together, and that should tell you the total number of people surveyed. Now, an easy way to check this is if you add down the column as well, you should also get it. So you could add going across, or you could add going down, and you should get the same. So the 243 stands for the total number surveyed. Okay, the 191, that represents no to tablet. The 52 says yes to tablet. The 158 says yes to cell phone. And the 85 says no to the phone. So that's how we interpret those sentences or those marginal frequencies. Okay. Next part, though, is we can look at this and we can take a story problem and fill in and be able to determine what are all the other numbers that we're needing. So it starts off, it says, you conduct a survey that asks 286 students in your freshman class whether they play a sport or a musical instrument. Now notice that becomes your total. So total, there was 286 students asked. So now let's go to the next sentence. The next sentence says 118 of these students play a sport. So you will notice that the 118 is the total for yes to sports. Then, if we continue to read, it says, and 64 of those students play an instrument. So that means that 64 is representing yes, yes. Okay? So they play a sport and they play an instrument. Then, if we keep reading, we go to the next part and it says 93 of the students do not play a sport or an instrument. So that would be our no representation. Now, what we're simply going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to find all the missing. So to find this, remember that going across the row, you would add these to equal your total. So to go backwards, you just simply take the 118 minus the 64. And that's going to give you 54 for no. Then we could take that and add that to the 93. And that's going to give us 147 total no's for instrument. Then, if we take the 286 and minus 118, that's going to give us 168. And then if we take that and minus the 93, that's going to give us 75 for yes to an instrument but no to a sport. And then if we add that to 64, that's going to give us 139. Okay, so that's how we would go about filling in the rest of that chart. The last part here is we can ask you also to find the percents, okay? So the first thing we would need in order to find the percents is we would need our marginal frequencies. In other words, we need all of our totals here. So if I start adding, I get 225 going down the first column. I take 219 and add it to 236, and that gives me 455. And then if I add that to the 225, that means 680 people were completely asked. Then if I wanted to do the seniors, that would be 337. And then the last one, if I take 124 plus 219, that's going to give me 343. Notice again, if we add going down. So now let's say this. What if I said, what is the percentage of juniors that said yes? Okay, remember to find that, what you're going to do is you're going to take 124, how many said junior yes, you're going to divide it by the total, and you're going to multiply that by 100. So 124 divided by 680 times 100 is 18.2%. Okay, so let's try another one. If I said senior no, we're going to take 236 divided by 680 times 100, and we'd simply do that math, divided by 680 times 100, and we end up with 34.7%. Okay, and you would just continue to go around in that, and you should be able to find each of those percentages. And that is how we use two-way tables to interpret data.